Well, hello everybody. Thank you again for joining us on the coaching presentation number 4 in our webinar series. We started just over a week ago and we're going through till the end of June. We've scheduled in, I think, through till the end of May, and we've still got a few more to fill in through the month of June, but we've got invitations out already, and we've got a fantastic lineup coming. Today we've got Ian Pope who's going to talk about coaching juniors. But before I do an introduction, just going to go through a few housekeeping things. And we're up to 269 now already, which is fantastic. So first of all, this presentation was produced by Ian Pope. It's not actually a bunch of slides. Ian is going to talk to us about some of the things that he does with coaching juniors. And we've got a new course that we're about to introduce, which I'll announce later, which is something that Ian has had in his mind for a while. And I'll talk more about that later. So please don't copy or record this presentation without permission from either Ian or ourselves at Estes from Australia. And this presentation and a copy of the recording will be available on Ester Connects for members to access. So I've been through this a number of times with people that have been on before, but if you can mute yourself during the presentation, it just means that everyone can hear nice and clearly. If you do have a question or a comment, you can use the chat facility that's down the bottom of your screen if you're on a computer, or you can access that by tapping your phone and typing in your question there. We will have some time for discussion at the end and some questions, and we are doing PD points for this. So we're going to try something a bit new. I'm just conscious of everyone's privacy and wanting to make sure that we don't have a whole lot of names and email addresses come up in the recording. So what we're going to do today that's different from other days is we're going to stop the recording and then ask you to put in your name and email address for those certificates and PD points. And we are going to issue those once a month at the end of the month with all of the sessions that you've attended in that month. Popey was just asking before what sessions we've got coming up. So Julie Robinson, former psych for both the UK and the Australian swim team. She's doing a session tomorrow on understanding anxiety. Then we've got Bill Sweetenham on Thursday talking about the 400. On Tuesday next week, Stefan Vidmer doing interlinked training and general versus specific. So that's things like getting in the gym and doing boxing and those sorts of things during this downtime. And then Wednesday, the 6th of May, Joanne Love is doing a session on driving performance. So those are all things to look forward to. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Ian Pope. Ian has been a coach in Australia for a long period of time, Olympic coach, Australian team coach, board member of ASTA, and just a fantastic guy. So Ian, over to you, and I look forward to your presentation. Take us through it.
Well, thanks, Brendan, and thank you for all those people who have come on board. It was amazing to see people from overseas and here engaging, trying to learn more. So I really thank you for being a part of this. Today, I want to talk about coaching juniors. What I found over a period of time, a lot of things we read and a lot of things we see on the internet is basically around senior athletes and what they do. And I think for so many of our coaches, and probably the majority of our coaches that are part of ASAP, are actually coaches that are mainly working with juniors. So this is not a high performance session. This is about how to coach juniors. And I'm really going to focus on looking at the technical aspect. That's probably the main thing I'll go through today. I don't want to go into too much of sets. I'll talk a little bit about the fundamentals of swimming in coaching juniors. So first of all, just some of the key things when I do work with junior squads. And to be honest with you, I just love working with young kids. They're so enthusiastic and they learn so quick and they progress a lot faster than these older athletes. So it's a wonderful opportunity to be a part of them. So first of all, what I'm going to talk about is the strokes. We're going to talk about the A, B, C, and D of each stroke. And so the A will generally mean about alignment. We'll talk about the alignment of the body. And then we'll talk about the arms and the sort of things that we want to see with the arms. And then I'll give you just one drill. And these are the key drills. I mean, there's so many different forms of drills. And so what I want to do is give you the key drills that you want to use to actually get this skill right. Okay, and then C is about, B, sorry, is about the breathing. So we'll look at the breathing timing and when we should breathe and what sort of drills we can do about breathing. And then C is that connection to the water. How can we connect better? I mean, we see it with the great swimmers. They seem to travel further. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And then D will be about drive. How can we drive off the stroke and travel more.
Not fast enough.
So that's what we're going to focus on when we get to the technical aspect. A couple of things about the training aspect, the fundamentals of training, is first of all, when we first start the training session and see a number of swimmers, when they push off, they actually push off on their front. So we actually want to make sure that our swimmers push off on the side. So I encourage the swimmers to just have one hand on the wall, okay, and you're facing the clock, and they actually come off the wall sideways. Now, for the majority of swimmers, when they first push off, they push off on their front. They arch their back, and in no turn at all do they actually really come off their front. So we notice in breaststroke and butterfly, we actually come off on the side, okay? And freestyle and backstroke is more on the back. So we want to encourage our swimmers when they first push off the wall to actually come off the wall on the side, okay? And then when they're actually doing the training, we want to make sure that actually when they come into the turn, they actually go into the turn in the middle part. I see so many swimmers making the mistake of coming down the left and then coming around the right. And when they do this, they actually do it in racing. So as a coach, I want to encourage you that when you've got your kids training, that as they come into that wall for that turn, they actually turn in the middle of the pool. A couple of things about turns. We just want to make sure when you're doing turns that they're low, okay, and they're really tight. And I think the more we can get that tuck of our body in the stroke, the more we're going to get a tighter circumference and make it quicker to get onto the wall. So we want to make sure that our turns are really tight and low. The butterfly and breaststroke just over the ear and keeping it really low. When they come into the wall, when they finish each repeat, now I encourage my swimmers and junior swimmers, all squads, to the last 5 strokes, there's no breath. I just think they need to practice these skills that they want for racing. Training is about preparing them for racing. So we want to make sure that when they're coming to the wall, those last 5 strokes from the flags in or 6, working with real young kids, there is no breath. Just some training habits, some training fundamentals that we need to reinforce all the time. So let's talk a little bit about the technical aspect. And for me, this is such an imperative part of coaching junior swimmers. We can get caught up in doing sets. And to be honest, I go and watch some programs and I see coaches right up on the whiteboard. They go 10 100s and they're going 10 100s of butterfly. And then all I see is a struggle stroke and bad technique. So especially for butterfly and breaststroke, it needs to be quality forms of training. It needs to be not, doing a whole lot of distances and big sets. So what I reinforce with the younger swimmers is just short distances. So they're practicing it the right way. And so you know what I mean by that struggle stroke. When you see the butterfly and they're breathing late and the legs are down and they're going through the water like this. So we want to make sure whatever sets you're giving them, in the butterfly and breaststroke especially, just short distances. It's about molding technique to holding technique. If you want to mold the stroke, they've got to hold the stroke. So, please, can I just get this one point across? If you're working with technique and you see them doing that struggle stroke, you have to ask yourself as a coach, what's my purpose here? What are they doing this for? Because they're actually practicing the wrong neuromuscular pathways. So I need you to get when you see that bad stroke, even with any group of swimmers, then you're actually reinforcing it because they're practicing it constantly that wrong way. So I want to reinforce that, doing it right. I'm a big one about stroke count too. The better swimmers are more efficient. You look at every level, they just travel more. And so in main sets, a lot of people just get times. And I think that's important with junior swimmers, that you're actually giving a lot of feedback in their times. You're getting stroke rates with the other watch occasionally when you can. But you can ask the swimmers on any main set to count their strokes. And you want to set some limits on the amount of strokes they're doing per lap. So for example, for younger swimmers, if they're doing 25-metre pool, you probably want to keep it down to 20 strokes or 25 strokes. So you set some benchmarks in relation to your stroke count. So when you're building a preparation, build it aerobically, but still hold the technical aspect. Watch where you see the stroke is going off. And then you have to make decisions. Do I keep this set going? Do I change it? Do I put fins on? So you have to make some decisions about what I need to do as a coach. So there's some just quick little fundamentals about some training aspects in relation to the swim. So what I'd like to do now is I want to go through the A, B, C, D of each stroke. And so first of all, let's talk about let's talk about the butterfly first. So we'll go with butterfly. and we'll stay in medley order. So the butterfly, the first thing you want to see is the first thing in A, I want to see a line, okay? So we want to see that alignment in the stroke. So the first thing I look for in butterfly is when their arms are in front. When we first teach younger kids, we actually tell them to put their chin on their chest so that it keeps the hips up and we get that right position. But when we start to get into junior squads and a little bit more advanced, we actually want to encourage the swimmers to have a long neck. Okay, so it's this sort of positioning more than this here, which creates a lot of tension here. And we certainly don't want the head too high as well, because we won't have the right catch part of the stroke. So we want to make sure the head's nice and aligned. Okay, so one of the first drills I do is just doing some fly movements. And I think it's important to use fins with really young kids. And as they progress, you want to use a bit of fins and a bit without, so they get to use their whole body in their stroke. So they get the whole body movements. And then, so all we want to do is a few kicks. So the first thing I look for is a few kicks, and then you go and take a breath on the fourth kick, preferably. So you get that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they come back to that alignment position. All right, that's so important. And I see when kids are doing this particular drill and their heads are dipping back down, they get the breath and then they dip back down. So what we want to do is keep the shoulders even at the surface. So 1, 2, 3, 4, take a breath and back into that position. So there's a couple of things I want to see there. The align, I want to see the hips continuous. So they're using the whole body. We want to make sure they're getting the breath with the chin in the water. I often use that word sneaky breath. I think that's a little word with the chin's forward in the water, but it's not coming up too high. Of course, that's what we want. Otherwise, the hips will drop. And the head's in a nice aligned position. So breathing every 4, and just do that with fins or without fins. Now, what a lot of coaches tend to do when they're working with junior squads is they encourage them to get straight onto the arms and straight onto the breathing. I believe butterfly, more than any other stroke, has to be progressive. So that means that when your arms you want to start to bring the arms in the stroke, let's not get into that in too much of a hurry. We want to make sure that we're kicking our legs and that breathing. So we get that first part, that alignment right first. Don't be in a rush to get straight into the arms, okay? So a couple of things. So from that, once they've got a fairly steady breathing pattern and they're keeping the kicks continuous, and that's what I sort of push, a continuous kicking action, low breathing, breathing on every 4 strokes or kicks, sorry. And then from there, we then introduce a little bit of the arms. Now for me, I generally get the swimmers out of the water. So we would do, look at the arm action, look at the way they're making sure a couple of things, that when their hands are coming over, they've got their thumbs down, they're that very low, nice and relaxed action. And I think in all strokes, it's probably a neglected area, the recovery. The recovery is really important. So we want to make sure that the arms are really relaxed and they come around, enter directly in front of your shoulders there. And then when we're going through the pulling action, I actually want to encourage a very high elbow as we're coming through. What a lot of swimmers tend to do is the junior swimmers, is they go to very deep and very straight through the pull. So one of the demonstrations I tend to use is when I have some junior squads, is I actually get them to, make sure they come through here, and then I get them to go to the side of the pool and actually come out of the pool and look where their arms are positioned. And what they notice is when they come out of the pool that their arms are positioned in the strongest position. Now you then ask them to come out of the pool with a straight arm, and they can hardly get out of the pool. So we want to make sure that the kids are actually aware of coming underneath their body. It's just going to be stronger, and you want to come in fairly close as you come through the stroke. So one of the drills, once we've done it from in the water, we then take them out of the water, we practice that, and we say, okay, let's try some drills in the water. And one of the drills I go to is just simply 2 left, 2 right, 2 of both. And so we're looking for 1, that alignment, so for A, and now we're looking at the arms, so another A. Okay, and as the arms come around, we're looking for in front of the shoulders, coming underneath. Now with younger kids, I generally, when I'm introducing the arms, I would probably be using fins because they just haven't got the strength to get their body up. So, I suggest try a little bit of both. So from there, we're doing a bit of 2 left, 2 right, 2 of both. And we want to see that continuous movement, okay? So low, sneaky breath on the second stroke. So that's a good drill. And then from there, two left, two right. I would probably try the whole stroke if they've managed that drills progression really well. So now we look at the breathing timing. So A, there's two parts of A. We've got the alignment and we look at the arms. And this is the progressions I would use when I'm coaching swimmers. And then from there, we look at the breathing. And I think this is the one area that most swimmers really struggle with, the timing of the breath. Now, I'm sure most of you have seen when you're coaching young kids there, this late breathing as their arms coming over and such a struggle stroke. So the timing of the breath is crucial. One of the easiest drills is just the 4 kicks with fins or without. And then you encourage the swimmers that they've got to pull first. A lot of kids will take a breath at the start. So they've got to actually do the pull first and then take a breath as they're coming forward for the stroke. Okay. And then I just tell them to bring their hands back underneath. So it's just 4 kicks to an underwater pull. Okay. 4 kicks to an underwater pull. And you're just focusing on the breath as they're pulling through. And then their head goes back down. There's no overarm at all at this point. And once they've got that right, then I'd move to the whole stroke. But I want to get this breathing timing correct before I move to the whole stroke. So important, it's progressive. So breathing would be the next thing. So we're looking at 4 kicks to 1 pull. And just looking at the breathing timing, that we're high elbows and we're coming forward and we're aiming to keep the chin in. Now, you might do that for a week or 2 with those particular younger kids. And then when you feel they could do the whole stroke, you could then move into the 4 kicks to 1 pull, but you do the whole stroke. So we're just going 4 kicks, 1, 2, 3, 4, a whole stroke. All right. And we're going to make sure when we're demonstrating that the head is going down as well. So 4 kicks just to 1 full stroke. So that would be my next progression. So we're looking at alignment. We look at the arms by doing 2 left, 2 right. And then we look at the breathing, 4 kicks to 1 pull. And now we go exactly the same, but we do a whole stroke from there. So these are the progressions that I would use. I'm just giving you one drill. I mean, we can see a lot of things and there's thousands of different drills for different reasons, but I'm just looking at the key drills we want to do with junior swimmers. What's easiest and for them to understand. So from there, we're doing 4 kicks to the 1 stroke. And if they're comfortable with that, at some point you want to get to the whole stroke. And in the whole stroke, we want to see the things I want to reinforce is the kick is continuous and low breathing and breathing every 2 strokes. Okay, so this brings me to D. C is the connection. How do we create a connection with the stroke? So that, once again, that 4 kicks to 1 stroke will help get that catch, that all important catch. And one of the things I do with trying to help swimmers with getting that catch is that I actually get them to press against a certain object or to press against your hands at that particular catch point, okay? So you actually reinforce and it helps the muscle memory if you can really reinforce that whole catch. So getting out of the pool, getting to press on the side of the pool, but that catch is so important. For a lot of swimmers, and this is probably the biggest fault we see when we're coaching butterflies at a young age, is when the kids put their hands in, the majority of them would drop their elbows. Is that correct? I think most of you would find that. So we want to make sure, as best we can, is trying to keep these up so they actually have some awareness of coming around and coming over the stroke. So getting them out of the pool, getting them to press, and I actually encourage some swimmers to do that behind the blocks, you know, before they race. So they press their hands in that position, you know, leaning forward, and then underneath here, same again, pressing the 2 positions, and that helps the muscle memory. So it's all important, that connection of the catch. And then the next area we're looking at is the drive. What drives them forward? And let's talk a little bit about the fly kick. And I think this is where we really need to take away the fins and teach the fly kick. And one of the things about fly kick I've always found is a lot of people just kick the down, and the propulsion is down and up. So we have to actually teach our young kids that we get propulsion both ways. And so one of the ways I find that probably the easiest way is probably vertical kicking. So the vertical kicking, they've actually got to keep the pressure on their feet the whole time. So when we're doing vertical kicking, just arms here, you can do a little bit of holding something or even your arms above, but I personally like here. And I look for whole body movements and I look for continuous movements. I don't want to see any pause. A lot of kids, when they do this fly kick, they tend to go pausing at the front or pausing in the back. There's got to be a quick transition and change in direction. Please understand that. A lot of people kick forward, they stop. They kick forward and they stop. And so there's a change in direction that's got to be quick. So when you're doing fly kick. So you want to do some drills around just doing some vertical kick. And when you see they've got a good movement, they're using their whole body, then I would shift it into doing some fly kick and putting that emphasis on the fly kick with the swimmers. And can I encourage you with the younger swimmers to get in some form of habit of the number of kicks that you want to push off from the wall. So, you know, for senior athletes, you would be looking somewhere between 5 to 8 fly kicks off the wall, depending on how good they are. With some of these younger kids, you want to encourage them at a very early age to be doing 3 to 4 kicks off every wall. So even up to 5 if they're pretty good. But they need to practice this at a very early age. You know, some people were amazed at Michael Phelps, how good he was at fly kick. But Michael was so good at fly kick, you know, he did 9 fly kicks every wall. Natalie Coughlin, another great world record holder for the underwater kicking in butterfly and backstroke. She used to do 11 fly kicks off every wall, and that's why they become great at it. So we need to, while we're coaching these juniors, just to start to be aware of setting some benchmarks and the number of fly kicks we want to do off the wall. So there's the all-important drive, okay? So the things we looked at here, we looked at the alignment, the way we're positioned in the water. We looked at the arm action, making sure they're relaxed, coming underneath. Looking at the breathing time, and this is something we have to work heavily on, 4 kicks to 1 pull, and then that all-important connection of the catch, you know, just out in front. And then we have to put an emphasis on these strong driving legs. So we have to have strong legs and work on these kids learning to kick both ways. So that's a little bit about the butterfly. One of the things when I, you know, have coached butterflies over the years is it's all about short distances, holding the right technique. I just want to get that point across. There's no struggle fly. So with younger juniors, it's generally 25s. As soon as we start to get out to 50s and especially getting out to 75s or 100s, it just becomes a struggle stroke. And it's a different stroke. It's a different timing. So we just don't want to encourage kids doing big distances of a butterfly. One of the ways around it, if you're trying to build the aerobic capacity for the butterflies, is maybe you can do 2 left, 2 right, 2 both. That's one way you might reinforce it. Do 1 lap of that and 1 lap with the whole stroke. So that's a little bit about butterfly. So when we come to the end, if there's any questions about the strokes, we can do that. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about backstroke now. And one of the first things in backstroke, I'll just grab a quick mouthful of water. Once again, we look at the alignment in backstroke. Now, what I see a lot of coaches doing, they encourage them to lift their chest up. So when I lift my chest up in my stroke, you've got to ask what happens to the rest of my body. So this arch created in the body, and then my hips are lower, and I'm not in a powerful position. I actually tell the swimmers to get the chest in. So by pressing the chest in or down, it actually changes the whole position of the hips, and the hips come forward. Now, even with senior athletes, when you start to see the arms at their side, just start off with some drills, and you ask them to actually press down into the chest, so they're pressing into the water. It actually changes their posture, so they're a bit more like a boat instead of shoulders back. So if their shoulders are back in backstroke, their arms will be in a position, right? Their arms will be in a position where it's actually behind them. But if they're down here, then it'll be in a stronger position. So the first thing we focus on is just getting a good alignment. So arms here, chest down. And you will see as a coach, when they get it right, all of a sudden you'll see their chest and their body be aligned and almost dry out of the water. So you just start off, the first drill I use in this alignment, this A, B, C, D, is just having your arms at your side, shoulders probably a little bit forward, so we've got this sort of posture instead of chest up, and just doing some kicking, and just giving them some awareness around pressing down into the chest. It's probably similar to like when you have a water polo ball. When you push the water polo ball, it actually creates, it sort of presses back and creates a lift. It's the same here. When we press in here and come down into the chest, we press down here and we change the body posture. You'll see the hips and the body be in a much more aligned position. So for some of you that tell these younger kids chest up, maybe try a little bit of chest pressing down as they get into this junior squad and these higher levels. Okay, so that's the alignment. Then we look at the arms for backstroke. Well, probably the easiest drill, and I'm sure we all do it, is just one arm backstroke. I like to isolate the strokes. So we just see when we do one arm backstroke, and it's so important the way we demonstrate, you know. For example, there was a time when I had a whole lot of backstrokers doing full catch up in the stroke. And I was wondering why they were doing that. And then I noticed that was the way that I was demonstrating. So they pick up on the way we actually demonstrate. So I think it's pretty important that we have a good way of demonstrating the actual strokes. So sometimes when I have a coaches meeting, we have coaches meeting every week, so there might be a few of those coaches on. Hi guys. We actually video some sessions where we actually get them to demonstrate, and quite surprisingly, they come to realize, they sort of say, oh, is that how I look? Is that what I'm doing? You know, the fingers are apart and all those sort of things. So the way we demonstrate our strokes is just so important, because the swimmers pick up things visually, okay, and that's pretty important. Okay, so we're looking at the way the hands come up directly in front of the shoulders, and I like it quite relaxed. A lot of swimmers very tight here, can be just like, why not relax it, saves energy, and then we have to demonstrate directly above our shoulder on our entry, okay? And so when we're doing the one arm, and the pulling action, it's not a deep action. A lot of people are teaching to press down with the back of their hand. If you look at most of the world-class backstrokers, it's not too deep here. They put their hand in and their thumb is behind the stroke. Now, a lot of swimmers will have their thumb out, and maybe this is a little bit more advanced, but you know, they just got to have awareness around keeping that thumb in as they come through the press. So it's not a very deep action. And the reason why we don't want it too deep is because the way the shoulder joint is made. The joint is not made to be back here trying to press. It's not powerful. So one of the ways you can get the swimmers to be involved in that is to get them outside the pool and get them to press, you know, in this position where the shoulders, right, in line with the elbows. And so when they've got that position, you press against them here and they'll feel the strength. And then you say, okay, now press here, right? It's not as strong. It's a lot weaker for them. So we want to make sure when we're doing that one arm, it's not too deep. It's sort of put your hand in, and then as we come through, it's a little bit shallower through the surface. And then some people ask, well, what do we do at the back part of the stroke? And I see some people teach the hit the dog on the head or something like that. So we just want to make sure as the hands come through that the fingers are pointing to the sides slightly. For some world-class swimmers, they have their fingers slightly high, more that sort of direction. Aaron Pearsall was that type of swimmer. Emily Seabon was also a backstroker. A number of backstrokers on the Australian team have their fingers, as they come through, facing more towards the top part of the stroke. So I like it quite deep, okay, as they come through the back part of the arm cycle. And it's like a tennis shot. It's an acceleration. There's an acceleration. And so I'm a big one about the acceleration, because a lot of swimmers tend to come in here and they will pause. So we want to make sure that it's like a tennis shot. And that's the analogy I use, just all the way through. Anyone good at tennis? So that's a little bit about the one arm. So you might do 25 of one arm, 25 meters of the other arm, and then 25 meters of the full stroke. But we want to look at those little parts of the stroke, little finger in first. I mean, it's basics, but we've got to do that right. It's got to be right. It's got to be fully extended. We've got to make sure that the body's actually rotated, so that when we do our stroke, okay, we actually a bit of rotation as we come through, but not too much rotation. I'll talk about that a little bit further when we talk about the connection to the stroke. Okay, so from the one arm, we don't want to look at breathing. We look at the balance. Okay, so I go to 6 kicks, change over from there. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then swap to the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so we want to make sure that they do that. It's not one arm and then the other. We don't want to see a big catch-up type of backstroke. We actually want to make sure they actually rotate at the same time. So as they're pressing here, the opposite arm is actually coming out of the water. So we want to make sure that's the way we want to see. So 6 kicks, change over, making sure the shoulders are out as they come through, rotate the other side. So we look at the balance. And so when I think about balance, one of the things I see at all levels of backstroke is I see too many swimmers have too much rotation or an uneven rotation. I was recently involved with the national event camp for backstroke, and it was great seeing some of the best backstrokers in the world. There was 2 world record holders there. And what I did notice, though, when we did some underwater analysis, that some of them were over-rotating more one side than the other side. So we want to make sure there's a pretty good even balance in the stroke. We're not over-rotating more one side than the other. A couple of things about the 50 compared to the 200 backstroke, and maybe this is a little bit away from junior swimmers, is that the 200 is a little bit more rotation, but never more than 30 degrees. You know, if you're getting over to 45 degrees and further, they're going to be too overbalanced, and then as they come through with their stroke, as they come through, they're not going to be in the position you want on the other side because they're over-rotated too much. So we want to make sure that there's a little bit more rotation in the 200 swimmers more than the 50 and the 100 metre swimmers, but really try and limit it to around 30 degrees. So, and try and get an equal balance. One of the easiest way to get that equal balance is just stationary backstroke. Just getting the swimmers to, you hold them on a cord and they're just practicing, and you can see the stroke and how much they're rotating, but you will notice that they can be over-rotating more one side than the other. So the B for backstroke is balance. All right, looking at the rotation, that it's evenly balanced. Okay. All right, and as we go to the connection in the backstroke, from there we can do 6 kicks as well. We're going to add a little bit of sculling in here so they get that feeling of the catch. You might just do sculling, or you might do 6 kicks and sculling at the same time. And then you change over the other side, or you might add 3 strokes. So from there, I go to the next progression is sculling, 6 kicks, whatever, and then you do 3 arm cycles. And so you're incorporating that catch position and then doing 1, 2, 3 and rotating to the other side. So a couple of things about backstroke. Let me think what else is there. So when I look at the head position, you know, so when we look at the alignment, so a lot of swimmers have the head too far forward, which affects the posture in the water. We want to make sure that the head's nice and long. And generally, if you look at the world-class backstrokers at all levels, we're working with juniors, you generally see just their face is above the water, okay? If you see the head too far forward, and some swimmers can have that keep their head slightly forward and still keep that great alignment through the body. So we want to make sure that actually they're holding this posture in the water, that they're, you know, if they are slightly forward, but their hips are still up, then that's fine. The idea is to keep that great line through the whole body position. So when we look at backstroke, we look at the arms, the alignment, the breathing, the connection. Then we go to the whole stroke. And one of the things is great backstrokers have a great kick. So the drive here is the legs. We want to make sure that they've got strong kicking, and you need to be incorporating kick to every one of your training sessions. So kick is just so imperative. I mean, if your legs go in a race, you're gone, you're done. So you need to be incorporating in your weekly cycle some forms of kick. And sometimes I do, you know, any range from sort of 2K up to 2.5K of kick sets, 2 to 3 times a week of strong legs. And then I'll do a lot of aerobic kicking, and I'll do some maximum kicking in the underwater fly work as well with all levels of swimmers. So the next part is having a good driving leg. So one of the things we want to see with the kick is that the feet are very relaxed. And once again, there's some power on the up kick, but also on the down kick. They have to feel that pressure on the down kick. A lot of kids, when they do this backstroke kick, when they come up to the surface, their toes point up and then they go back down, and they're not getting any propulsion on that down kick. So we want to make sure that when they're doing the kick, all right, we're pushing water backwards that way. And then when they're kicking downwards, you're getting propulsion immediately on that down kick as well. So strong driving legs, incorporate some quick kick sets through your program. Someone's just texted me then, that's very nice of them. Okay, so just as a summary for backstroke, align, great head position, just their face out of the water, trying to get a lot of their cap underneath. Their arm action, let's keep it pretty shallow, not too deep, not too far down. And we want to make sure that it's coming through, have a look at the position, and they're holding that connection, which goes to see the connection, that all-important catch. And so that catch is connected all the way to the core, you know, so we want to make sure that they're connecting to the core as well, and then that all-important strong driving legs. Okay, so that's a little bit about the backstroke. All right, we're going to move forward now. We're going to talk about let's go to breaststroke now. And so for breaststroke, is one of the key things is, first of all, we have to notice during the most propulsive part of the stroke that the opposite, when they're creating propulsion, so they're getting propulsion from their arms, the opposite end is as lined as best you can. It's about reducing resistance. So many kids tend to be in this position. So whenever we're doing our arm pull, the opposite side, the legs are flat. Whenever we're doing the kick, in that kick position, we want to see the opposite, the arms out in front in a perfect line position. And it's got to be a perfect line. If you watch the great swimmers, and somewhere in your training, you've got to get that perfect line. And it means all the way from here, from your chin to your chest, to the hips slightly forward, to all the way through to your feet. There's a great line. And if you have a look at some of the great breaststrokers, you'll notice that they're actually completely lined in their body, so they're creating less drag. Okay, so breaststroke alignment's the first thing I do, and I want to just do the kick with the align. So I go in this position, just do a kick into a line, and then take a breath, and then keep the head, bring the head back down. This is really important that you actually don't create this dipping of the body back down. So it's just kick. Okay, take a breath, and the kick is at the timing. When they finish the kick, you take a breath in. And then from there, you just keep the kick going, breath, back into position. So first thing, nice alignment. You can do a lot of drills around with the kickboard, holding the sides, holding the edges, just working on that alignment and working on the drive off those legs. Let's look at the arms, and there's so many variables in the breaststroke arms. And, if you look at a world level or across the junior squad or anything, you won't see any stroke that's particularly the same across the board. And so let's just talk a little bit about the arms and get a bit of clarity on the arms, the sort of things we want to see. So one of the first things with the arms, excuse me one moment, is we want to make sure the palms are out. The palms are out and it's fairly straight. Now I talk to these young kids about getting into this Y position. All right, that's what I look for, just into that Y position. It's fairly straight here. It doesn't bend too early. It's a fairly straight arm action. And from here, once you take it, it's pretty much an outward and an inward movement. An outward and an inward movement in breaststroke. It's not a back movement. It's not so far coming back, because that just it puts the timing out. And I'm sure you'll notice when we're working with junior swimmers that they tend to do a big stroke. So we're going to look at how can we change that. Some of the ways you might want to do is, I like to get them out of the water and go through the hand process. But the key things we want to see in the arm action is that the palms are out on the way out. They're up near the shoulders. And then when we scull in, when we come in, when the hands sweep in, the palms, soon as the point where they're almost inside of your elbows, the palms face each other. So they go from that out. So it's like just there, an outward movement, bring the hand in. And when the palms face each other at about the level with the elbows, the whole thing squeezes forward. Now, I recently I got a photo of the top 6 breaststrokers in the world, and all of them going forward now, they're going forward in this position. Now, it's a bit of a neglected area, and you see some world-class people going up and over, and you see some people low, and you see some people with flat hands. Once they sweep in here, and they come in, you actually want to get the hands and the elbows in here, and it's just this position going forward, okay, as they bring their head down. So one of the ways you want to help the young kids who are not doing this great big stroke, this half stroke, this sculling type action, is to actually do a sculling type movement with freestyle kick. So that's the first thing I do with teaching the arms, just freestyle kick. I'm even doing freestyle kick. And sculling arms, just an outward in. So we actually learn that it's an outward and an inward movement. It's an outward, it's sculling action. It's not a big stroke. So it's just an outward and an inward movement. Kicking with freestyle kick. Great drill. Okay, so that's a little bit about the arms. Then we look at the breathing timing. When we look at breaststroke as a timing, a lot of swimmers will take a breath at the start when we're working with real young swimmers, and some kids tend to breathe a little bit late sometimes too. I like to see the breath when they go from that out to the in, because you've got that natural rise as you come up. Okay, you've got that natural rise. And then when you're going forward, I like the head to come down between the arms. The reason why is by getting the head down, we're going to get that perfect alignment. We're going to bring the hips up and the legs up. Now, I was having a look at Lily King the other day in her breaststroke underwater, and what we noticed when she kicks is straight away the feet come up to an upward fly kick. So she immediately reduces resistance by getting that upward fly kick. Now, what you notice with some of the breaststrokers these days, it's changed a lot, is that narrower kick. So this big breaststroke, big wide kick can suit some of the 200 breaststrokers, but for these young kids, it's pretty important they actually learn to do a smaller kick. And for a lot of swimmers, it's just like a half kick. It's not way up here, right up to your bottom, and then that kick. Now, if you have problems with young kids with one, you have with that feet come out, one turns out, one turns in, okay? I'm sure you've experienced that sometime through coaching, is we want to make sure both feet are out in this position, but it's quite narrow. One of my swimmers, Daniel Cave, that swam with me and made the World Championship team 2 years ago, it took him 6 months to get a narrower kick. And one of the ways, and to get that feel of the kick, you try to narrow it. And one of the ways we actually tried to teach that with him was we worked a lot with kicking with a pull buoy. So just pull buoy kicking. We do some drills around just laps, and then occasionally we do some kicking with the pull buoy, and then take the pull buoy out. So they're swimming along doing breaststroke, and they've got the actual pull buoy between their legs, and all of a sudden I ask them just let the pull buoy go, and all of a sudden they just go into the breaststroke, and they've got that natural smaller kick and a narrower kick. Because this kicking action, if it's outside the body too much, we're creating too much resistance. So if we look at the world level, they're quite small. Efimova, Adam Peaty, they're all got this smaller, narrower kick. And those that are going to that next level, that's what we notice. So you want to look at while you're working with some of these young kids, play a bit with that narrower kick and give that a go and see how they feel with that. All right. So the breath is taken here. So one of the easiest drills you can just do is 2 pulls to 1 kick, but every time when they pull in to get a breath on that in sweep, as they go from that out to the in part of the stroke and they go forward. Okay, I hope you're still with me. We're going to get to freestyle yet. So the connection. So one of the things I do there is we do a couple of sculls, and we get the corners. What I talk about, the corners. There's that Y position. So we go out to that Y position, and we actually want to get the corners of our stroke with our hands out here. Hope you can see that. And so once they get the corners, we generally see that the little finger, all right, the little finger comes in and sort of like it's turning around. It's like it's curling in that way. So that's that sort of action. All right. So, but we want to get those corners. And I tell my swimmers about it's like, it's like they're grabbing the water and they're bringing their body towards forward as they catch the water. So they bring their core towards their stroke. And then there's this all important lunge forward into the stroke. So a little bit about the connection there. Let's talk a little bit about how to get more of a drive. And when we're coaching junior swimmers, we generally find for a lot of the younger kids, when we're working with them, they come in here for the breath and they pause. That's what we see. We just see they come in and it's like they stop here. And so one of the ways we want to change that and to get more drive off the whole stroke is we actually want to get them to go a few butterfly kicks, just fast butterfly kicks, and it's got to be fast. And so they just got to get that drive moving forward. So, so we start off, and once they've got that faster recovery, because we need that recovery to be fast, we're working against resistance, it's got to be fast. So, we want to do fly kicks, jumping forward, and then once they manage that and you see that they're driving forward a lot more, I then do a bit of a transfer. I just say, okay, I want to do that fly kick into the whole movement. Okay, so fly kick, and then they shift into the breaststroke itself. And that's an easy way to actually teach that driving stroke. Okay, so it's fly kick. And then all of a sudden when you're ready, they're ready, they just go into it with the breaststroke kick. So they've got the rhythm of the stroke. They've got that drive of the body moving forward. And then you introduce the breaststroke into the whole stroke. Okay, so that's a couple of things about breaststroke. Let's just look at the whole stroke. So in the alignment, we want to reduce resistance, pretty important. We look at the arm action, it's just an out, more an out and in sculling action. Okay, there we're looking at the breathing timing, that the breath is from that out to that in. So when they get that natural rise, and then the head goes down as they go forward into the stroke. The all-important connection. They've got to get that catch. They've got to get that feel of the stroke in that wide position. And one of the ways is that sculling, get the catch there, and then sweep in and drive forward. And then the kick drive. I think more than any other stroke, you've got to do more breaststroke kick, because they certainly have to watch they're not working too hard, they're getting in a lot of pain or anything, but not any pain at all. But if breaststrokers don't have the kick at the end, they're gone, they're done. So we want to, probably more than the other group, a couple of sets throughout the week, you want to encourage a little bit more breaststroke kick for the breaststrokers. Not saying to specialise with younger swimmers. I've seen so many swimmers over the years be great at one stroke and then make world-class swimming in another stroke. So I can name a number of swimmers that have done that. So that's breaststroke. So let's have a look at freestyle now. And I'm sure there's a few questions there. And anything I talk about today, for some of you might have a slightly different idea or a different drill. I'm really focusing just on how to coach juniors. Okay, so you know, everyone's got different ideas, and I won't agree with that. But what I want you to go with away from today is learn this A, B, C, D. So we're looking for those things. A, we're looking for the alignment. How's my body looking in the water? B, to look at the breathing or look at the balance of the stroke. C, how are they connecting? How are they traveling? How can I improve that? And then looking at that all-important drive off the stroke. How can we get a better drive off the stroke? Let's have a look at freestyle now. How are we going for time? Oh, I'll move right along. Okay, a couple of things about freestyle. Freestyle, we want to make sure we go through the same steps. We look at the alignment first. So, you know, I do a lot of what I call Superman, and I just ask for this head position so the neck is aligned with the spine. Right? It's not forward like we first introduced, and when we're teaching young kids, we actually teach them to put their head under, down, between the arms like this, streamlined. We actually want the neck aligned, so there's no tension here in the neck. So I encourage you to just do what I call Superman. You can do whatever, you know, just call it kicking, arms in front. And so I do a lot of this stuff, and then I do transfer into swimming. So we start off with that alignment, just kicking, hold that alignment in position, we're kicking. You'll see great body posture, hopefully. And then from there, we ask them to hold that stroke into the full stroke. So that's a good way to just reinforce that body posture and that alignment. The freestyle arms, let's talk about the freestyle arms, and they vary so much, and there's a lot of questions. Do I teach bilateral? Do I teach open arms, bent arms? For me personally, I think, you know, if you look at a world level, so many swimmers are quite open now in the sprint events, and I think you need to be open to trial that. You'll notice some swimmers are very restrictive in their recovery and they look very tight. Can I suggest that you just simply tell them, just open up your arms, bring it over like you're doing bowling a ball or something like that, and just try them to open up. And for some swimmers, all of a sudden, that's so much easier for you. So I would teach a little bit of open arm, a little bit of bent arms. Now, you know, with the distance swimmers, they all generally bend and they're very light because they want to save energy. So from this free exit part here, the hands need to be quite relaxed and we need to come forward. We know all this stuff. We want to enter in front of the shoulders. And so what happens here, from here when we go in here? Well, I simply ask my swimmers to think about just the little finger curling around towards my stomach. So my hand's here, okay? And then instead of just pressing out this way with this sort of position, I actually want the hands to curl around with a high elbow, of course, to come under their body. Now you'll notice with the sprint kids, they're a little bit deeper. And for some kids, you actually have to get them up a little bit higher because they're in a stronger position. So when we're looking at the arm action, we actually want to make sure they've got a high elbow. If they get in this position here and we're dropping here, quite common, we want to make sure that this is up, this part's up here, and that first initial movement is with that high elbow. From here, when the hands, those little fingers come around towards the midline, and then the positioning of the hands change as it goes in towards the exit. So that's a little bit about the arms. Once again, it's probably similar to what I do in backstroke. We tend to just do one-arm drills. I'm a big fan of some one-arm drills. Okay, let's looking at the freestyle, looking at the breathing timing. And so personally, I think with younger kids, they have to learn to breathe both sides. So you might encourage them to breathe bilaterally. If they train all their lifetime and they're just breathing one side, you'll find they'll be physically developed more on one side than the other. I think at a young age, you have to teach bilateral breathing, or you tell kids to breathe down on one way on the way down and breathe on the other way on the way back. So you have to find a balance of the breathing a bit on both sides. Generally in a race situation, I prefer just breathing to the one side. And so breathing to one side keeps them, some kids are a little bit awkward on the other side. But in some of the distance events, it's important that you have that ability to have a look on the other side. So I like the breathing twos, and some of the sprint events, the less breaths is better. So even with these young kids, we want to teach them a little bit about breath control. So maybe breathing, I like breathing fours more in the 200, and for some swimmers going fours to twos or mixing that around. So a little bit about the arms there. So let's look at the breathing just quickly. We'll look at the breathing timing. So the next drill I would go to in freestyle is just one arm. Okay, so when the hands enter and the other arm is at my side, just at that point after the hands enter, we get a breath. So it's not before, it's not, we get a breath here. We have to control this shoulder here. A lot of swimmers make the mistake of dropping down here and getting the breath, and then we notice that hand comes across the body a little bit. So we want to make sure that the hands are entering in front of the shoulders, breath there, and then as they pull towards their body, right, their head goes back down. They can't be still turning their head as they pull through. Big problem we have with a lot of swimmers. So we want to get, this is a good drill, even if they pause out in front, get the breath on the entry, head back down and then pull. So they're not still rotated sideways. So that's a good breathing drill. We'll keep moving along. We'll talk about the connection in the stroke. And I think this is, the great swimmers. And I watched Mac Horton through his career come, all the way from a 10-year-old all the way to what he's done today. And watching these type of swimmers, they just have this feel for the water. And some swimmers just have it naturally and just go, oh, wow. And then for other swimmers, you really have to work on developing that. And so that all-important connection in freestyle, that all-important connection with the lats and through the core as they travel forward with the stroke. And one of the things, once again, we need to do the stroke count. I had a fortunate opportunity to coach Grant Hackett for a couple of years there. And, he used to do about 32 strokes per lap to 31 strokes. And Mac is down to sort of 27, 28 strokes. So it's phenomenal. He's just that a little bit more efficient. And that's what you find with the great swimmers. So whether you're working with juniors or working with senior swimmers, you want to make sure that you're actually spending a little bit of time working on stroke count, especially in those main sets. And just getting the habit of them calling out how many strokes they did and giving them some awareness around that. I would encourage that with your junior swimmers and with senior athletes. It's imperative that you're actually working on breath control. Strong driving legs. One of the drills that help with that drive is we do a lot of, this is a drill I used to watch Alex Popov do. We used to call it the Popov drill. I don't know. I just call it pause and drive now. Some people say, who's Alex Popov? That's what my swimmers would say. Anyway, so they come here and they bring their hands up. So they get the breath here. They come up to here and they pause here. And it's about getting that timing right, that drive off the front. So we want to use the momentum of this part of the stroke to travel off the front, to move forward off the front of the stroke. So we come up, we pause here, the hands in front, and then it's that transfer where you snap and drive forward off the stroke. And then you're back on the other side, pause here, drive. So that's another drill that can help that timing, get that all-important catch so they're moving forward off the stroke. We need to challenge them on that. So overall in freestyle, I'm moving along here, alignment, always about posture. When I'm watching swimmers, that's the first thing I look at, the A, where's their hips, where's their core, how's their body positioned in the water. That's the first thing I look for in every stroke. I look at the arms or the balance, and then I look at their breathing timing. And then we talk to them about that connection, like you're not holding water, you're not connecting, you're not traveling. Whatever words you use, and find what words work for you and what makes it work for you. So A, B, C, D, pretty of all strokes there. So I've pretty much covered all strokes. Just a couple of things about I didn't cover before, and then we'll go to question time. How are we going for time? We've got about a couple more minutes. I'm happy to talk longer. Just quickly, when you're communicating with athletes, you want to make sure that you're not just using just auditory words. Now, we know now that 7% of what you say is how we communicate. Now, if it's only 7% is your words and 36% is your physiology, the way you use your expressions, and the visual impact is where they learn the most predominantly. So we want to make sure that when we're coaching young kids that we're working on all those 3 or 4 areas, working on the visual, because they pick up on your demonstrations. They pick up. So you're actually creating some visuals in when you're demonstrating, in the way you're demonstrating. We want to make sure that your words are important. So for those auditory athletes, the words and what I say is pretty important. And the kinesthetic people, that's around the feeling of the water. Well, I did a recent study on with some of my swimmers, and with just a basic questionnaire, so I understood their learning style. And I understand the visual and the auditory, and there's a few questions I got them to answer, so I would understand how they actually learn best off me. And we all learn all different areas, but there's always a predominance of one more than the other. Now, when I assessed my group, I thought they were quite visual, but to be honest, there's what they call sort of more digital audio, which means they want to know why. So as a coach, when I'm explaining something, we just give sets. Sometimes, okay, guys, we're going to go 850s. We want this intensity. We want this sort of stroke count. This is what we're looking for. But they want to know why we're doing this. So just start to think of, when you're giving sets, you actually communicate, what am I trying to get across here? What's the point? And for the majority of my squad, I was so surprised. They were these digital audio characteristic type of people that really want to know why. And that's certainly our generation today that we're working with the young kids. So can I just encourage you, when you are communicating with your swimmers, that you're actually communicating visually, auditory, kinesthetic, a bit of feeling stuff if they need that, and tell them why. So that's probably enough about me rambling on about some strokes. I think I'll hand it over to Brendan. And Brendan, you might have some questions from some of the people there.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
To elaborate. I want to keep on the stroke stuff. I don't want to go into sets so much. That's another talk within itself. We could do another time, but just want to focus more on the stroke stuff.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Ian. What a wonderful presentation. It's so good to not have PowerPoint, and I feel like you've just demonstrated how to teach your athletes to do a session when they can't get in the pool, because you look like you're knackered after all of those movements and arms.
Well, I think certainly, our energy affects the swimmer's energy. If we walk in the pool and we have this down energy, and that can affect how they are. And, there's those mornings where you haven't had a lot of sleep or something's going on for you, and you've got to have your energy up, because what you bring to the session will have an impact on them, because we know that my energy affects other people's energy. So how you are, your physiology as a person, will have an impact on how people are.
Absolutely.
Have your energy up.
Yeah, absolutely. So there have been a few questions come through. I'm going to ask Gary to go through them, but before I do that, Ian, I just want to say thank you for a wonderful presentation, and to let everyone know that you've been up here on the Sunshine Coast. We've had you videoed in front of a bunch of junior swimmers, and we've pulled that together into a course which we've called Coaching Juniors. And you've done a wonderful job with the video. We've put some questions around it to make it into a course, and that's going to be available from next week. So we're going to be promoting how people can access that. If you've loved the presentation that you've seen, if you love the ideas, if you want some more examples of some of those drills that you've been talking about, Ian, then we can go on. And all the profits from that course that we're going to run are going to Astakeers, which is our benevolent fund for coaches and teachers. So I just want to say thanks to you, Ian, for doing that video and that presentation. And I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic product.
Yeah. And one of the things about we spent 2 days filming me coaching juniors. It was a group I've never coached before up at St Andrews. Great group of young swimmers. And I went through similar progressions that we did today, but I went through starts, turns, everything. I actually coach the group, so you see some of the words and how I use what I'm trying to get across. And but the idea of this video is really to help coaches who are working with junior swimmers, and all the money from this, and we're not going to charge much at all, will go back to Astakeers. And especially at this time, we know a lot of coaches will need a lot of support. So wonderful that we've seen.
Fantastic. Okay, we've got a couple of questions. So Gary's been capturing those, and he'll come to you now with one of them at a time.
All right, this one here is from Barb. Is there any advantage in having the younger children do fly kick on their back, and does this help with their hip movement?
Okay, good question. I have had some swimmers. One of the swimmers, Michael Clem, used to go to fly kick in his freestyle. It does work for some swimmers. I think and I've actually had some swimmers do it in backstroke. It will actually it's a good drill. It's a good drill to do to actually teach the young swimmers to get that snap of the rotation. So yeah, a good thing to do. I don't personally do a lot of it with younger swimmers. Certainly would help that quick rotation. What I noticed with some of the backstrokers, and I've had some wonderful backstrokers, Matt Welsh and Gian Rooney over the years, is that they get a real snap in the rotation into their stroke. So it's a fast movement in the rotation. So yeah, good drill. Thank you.
All right, this one's from Brian from Rockhampton. Are there simpler versions of these skills that you're implementing in the Learn to Swim program?
Certainly, a lot of these drills you would use in Learn to Swim. This was sort of like targeted at junior squad and sort of upwards, so younger age groups. And certainly a lot of these progressions, you would want to focus on similar stuff. We know in Learn to Swim, we want to be aligned. We want to work on that stuff. You can simply go to the one-arm drills as well. And with those one-arm drills, you can work on breathing, timing. And so a lot of these drills you could actually use for junior, right back into the swim school squads as well. Some of them were a little bit more technical, but I would say a large majority you could still use for Learn to Swim.
And the next one is from Anthony from Sydney. When you communicate, is less said more? Do you pre-prepare some of your dialogue to answer the why, but as succinctly as possible? Okay,
so when I'm teaching a group, I'll probably give an overview of what I want, and we certainly have to be aware that, especially the boys, they don't want a lot of information. You just got to be straight to the point. So I give a little bit of an overall view of what I want to get across, and then what I just before they push off, I just say, okay, we've got to make sure 1 or 2 points. So if it was a fly kick, make sure we're getting that up kick. You ready? Let's go. So yes, we need to be aware as coaches, we can ramble on too much. And especially today, these young athletes want just 1 or 2 key points and then off they go. So give a bit of an overall view and then a little bit of a summary. That sort of works for me at this point.
Simon Smith has raised his hand. Simon, if you've got a question that you haven't typed in, you can turn your microphone on and give that directly to Ian. And while you're doing that, Gary can go one more question.
I have a question also from Gary from Sydney. Ian, you never mentioned the physiology of the youngsters. Kids are all different body shapes. It is difficult to have a rule of thumb. What's your thought?
Okay, so one of the things, physiology is another area for coaching juniors. And the way I think a lot of coaches make the mistake and they see how the seniors swimmers are doing it and they follow these, high velocity overloads or, these different types of sets. And we really have to think about what's the most important for the kids you're working on. And when we look at physiology, you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to change here? What am I trying to improve? And so for some swimmers, I'm trying to build their aerobic capacity or anaerobic capacity, whatever that might be. And then you give sets around that. So I didn't want to cover physiology. I really wanted to focus on the technical aspect because I think that's such an important aspect in working with younger swimmers. So the physiology, it's a whole new different ballpark. The main thing is when I'm working with juniors is you have to ask yourself that early question, to mold technique, how do I hold the technique? If I'm going to mold this stroke that I want, I've got to make them hold it. And so what physiology training sets am I doing so we're holding that stroke that you want?
Here's the next question. Are pools shallow? What's an alternative to vertical kick?
Okay, yeah, good question. So the question is around, well, one of the things we want to do is probably kicking against the wall, kicking on your back. So one of the things I want to do is I try to reinforce that the kicking action is an up and there's no pause in that up kick. Excuse my hands in front of your face there. So one of the ways I can do that is actually I get them to kick on their back and I tell them to splash the water. So actually to kick the water out and then try and kick that water back down. So what that reinforces is that quick direction change in the kick, in the fly kick. So they kick up and they've got a splash. And you can just do that on the side, okay? And right now is a good time to do some, in a small pool area, just some kicking on your side where they actually splash the water and they've got to push that water back down. So they're teaching it to do that kicking both ways, which simulates similar to vertical kicking.
Next question here is, can you make some suggestions to build rhythm for the butterfly stroke for 5 and 6 year olds?
Oh, wow. Well, I think if a 5 and 6 year old can do butterfly, that's amazing. I have seen some young swimmers do incredible butterfly at a very early age. And so, look, they need to be fairly strong, and you'll generally find those 5 or 6 year olds that can do butterfly, which is amazing, are fairly strong already, and you probably find that they've had some form of gymnastics background or something like that. Really, as I want to get across here, butterfly is short distances, so keep it short. It might be 12 and a half, it might be 15s to start with. And then once they've got that stroke and they're holding the stroke, then shift them out to the 25s. But ultimately, short distance, no point in teaching them struggle stroke. And that's the key thing with butterfly.
Now we got a question from Hayden Belshill from Barker.
This is a good question. This will put you on the spot, Popey.
No,
So,
on the spot.
Different stroke models for those different physiologies, but over the years, who do you feel swam the stroke the best in each of the 4 strokes?
Each of the 4 strokes. Oh, well, good question. I think Stephanie Rice was very well balanced in all 4 strokes. You know, I mean, for a lot of medley swimmers, and I encourage coaches to really focus on all strokes. I've had a lot of swimmers that are great at 1 stroke, and then by the 15 or 16, then all of a sudden they're out the door. Matt Welsh, who's listening today, was a butterflyer, and he was a butterflyer, and then we changed him to backstroke, and he broke a few world records in backstroke, and then eventually we changed him to butterfly again, and he broke a world record in butterfly. I think a lot of swimmers, Marika Gura was also a backstroker. She broke a world record in butterfly and backstroke, and went on to represent Australia later on in freestyle. So, you know, I just think for a young coach, please don't specialise, just work on all 4 stroke components. But Stephanie Rice would probably be my model, that she was pretty good at all strokes, yeah.
Next question here is from Carmel about, do you use a snorkel in any of your drills?
Okay, great question. I'm a fan of snorkel, especially trying to get this first part aligned, okay? So just, you know, so a snorkel is just an easy way to get that aligned. To be honest, I don't teach it a lot when I'm coaching with juniors, but ideally, I think it's a great piece of equipment that you can use, and it just helps with that, holding that posture that you want in the water.
Well, I think that's probably all the questions. Yeah, that's all that's come up on the chat, so that's fantastic. I guess if anyone does have another question and you haven't got the typing skills, or you want to just turn your microphone on, then feel free to ask that. Pope, I just have to say we peaked at 358 people, and we know that some of those had multiple people on the call as well. So you can next time you see Rowan Taylor, you can tell him he owes you a beer because you've beaten him by 50 odd.
Okay, whatever.
So look, thanks once again. I'm going to pause the recording there and end that. So what I'll do is I'll say...
Brendan, can I just finish before you finish it there? I just think, you know, we're in such a special position in coaching young swimmers, and today more than any other time, we have a big impact on these young people, and I feel it's quite a blessing to work with these young athletes. So can I just encourage, just enjoy, have a bit of fun in coaching. Yeah. Young kids, they love fun, and that's what's going to keep them in the sport. If you want those kids to go all the way through, then make it enjoyable, make it fun, do some different stuff, and especially today. So, yeah, wish you all the best in your coaching with the young kids.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. That's great advice. Of course, kids are there because they want to have fun, right? So the more fun you can have with them, the more fun they'll have, hopefully. So, okay, look, we'll pause the recording there. And if anyone does have...